The fluorescent lights of Mercy General's maternity ward hummed with the kind of cold efficiency that Maya Johnson had come to associate with hospitals. Sterile, impersonal, and in her case, actively hostile. She sat in the hard plastic chair beside her hospital bed, 14 days postpartum, trying to soothe two screaming newborns, while a nurse stood in the doorway with her discharge papers and an expression that made Maya's skin prickle with familiar dread. "Mrs. Chen, you really should have someone here to help you transport the babies." Nurse Patricia's tone suggested she didn't believe Maya deserved to be called Mrs. anything. She'd been saying Chen with a particular emphasis since Maya had checked in 2 weeks ago, her lip curling slightly each time, as if the name didn't quite fit the brown-skinned woman who'd given birth to twin boys in room 347. Maya adjusted Elijah in her left arm while trying to keep Caleb from sliding off her lap, her body still aching from the emergency C-section that had brought them into the world 16 hours early. "My husband is coming. He just got delayed at work." "Right. Work." Patricia's eyes swept over Maya's worn Target maternity clothes, the single duffel bag that contained everything Maya had brought for her hospital stay. The absence of flowers or balloons, or any sign that someone cared she'd just delivered 2 human beings. "Well, hospital policy states that newborn twins require 2 adults for discharge. I can't release them to you alone." The policy was new. Maya had checked. Patricia had invented it somewhere between this morning's shift change and now, 3:00 p.m. on a Friday, when the maternity ward was trying to clear beds for the weekend rush. "I'm a pediatric nurse," Maya said quietly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I've transported dozens of newborns. I'm perfectly capable of hospital policy is hospital policy." Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Unless you'd like me to call social services to help evaluate your home situation?" The threat landed exactly as intended. Maya had heard the whispers, knew that Patricia and her colleagues had been speculating about the Chinese last name, the absent husband, the single duffel bag, the Medicaid insurance card, despite Marcus's insistence they could afford private coverage. She'd felt their judgment like a physical weight every time she'd buzzed for help during those first terrifying nights when both babies had screamed simultaneously, and her incision had burned like fire. If you're hooked on this story already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens when Maya's secret billionaire husband finally shows up. Trust me, you're going to want to see the look on everyone's faces. Now, let's get back to the story. Caleb's wails intensified, his tiny face scrunching with the kind of rage only a 2-week-old could express. Maya shifted him to her shoulder, feeling the dampness seep through her shirt where her milk had let down in response to his cries. She needed to feed them soon, needed to change them, needed to get them home to the small apartment in Queens that Marcus had insisted was temporary, just until he figured some things out. Except Marcus hadn't been home in 3 days. His texts had been sparse and cryptic. "Family emergency. Don't worry, I love you. We'll explain everything soon." Maya had given birth via emergency C-section, alone, while Marcus was apparently dealing with a family she'd never met, relatives he'd barely mentioned in the 18 months they'd known each other. She'd signed papers while contractions racked her body. She'd been wheeled into surgery with only a nurse's hand to hold. She'd woken up to 2 crying babies and the crushing realization that she'd married a man who might be exactly as unreliable as everyone had warned her he'd be. "I'll wait," Maya said finally, pulling out her phone to text Marcus again. "He'll be here." Patricia's expression suggested she'd heard that before, from too many women in too many hospital rooms, waiting for men who never showed up. "I'll check back in an hour. After that, we'll need to discuss other arrangements." After the nurse left, Maya allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to cry, not the ugly sobbing she wanted to do, but quiet tears that leaked from the corners of her eyes while both babies fussed against her chest. She'd done everything right. Finished nursing school, worked double shifts, saved money, waited until marriage to have children. And somehow she'd still ended up here, broke, alone, and facing down a system that seemed determined to prove she was exactly the kind of mother they'd suspected she'd be. Her phone buzzed. Not Marcus, but a number she didn't recognize. Maya Johnson? This is Detective Sarah Chen with the NYPD. We need to talk about your husband, Marcus Chen. It's urgent. Maya's blood went cold. Her first thought was accident, injury, death. All the terrible possibilities that came with an NYPD detective calling. Her second thought was confusion about why a detective would have her number, would know to find her here. Is he okay? Is Marcus hurt? He's fine. But there are some things you need to know about who Marcus Chen really is. Things his family doesn't want you to know. Can we meet? Privately? Before Maya could respond, the door opened again. Not Patricia this time, but a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread about powerful women who brunch. Mid-50s, platinum blonde hair in a sharp bob, wearing a cream Chanel suit that probably cost more than Maya's nursing school tuition. Her blue eyes were cold as January ice. You must be Maya. The woman's voice carried the kind of authority that came from never being told no. I'm Victoria Thornton, Marcus's mother. The world tilted. Maya stared at this elegant white woman, claiming to be her husband's mother, trying to reconcile the image with Marcus's careful vagueness about his family. He'd shown her exactly 2 photos, a blurry shot of what he said were his parents at a distance, and a childhood picture too faded to make out details. He'd said his mother was American, his father Chinese, that they were comfortable but not wealthy, that they'd had a falling out over his choice to marry outside their expectations. He'd never mentioned that his mother looked like she had a building named after her somewhere in Manhattan. Victoria's eyes swept over Maya with the same disdainful assessment Patricia had used, but refined by decades of practice in dismissing people who didn't meet her standards. Her gaze lingered on the babies, on Maya's swollen body still carrying pregnancy weight, on the state Medicaid card visible on the bedside table. We need to talk about your marriage to my son, Victoria said, settling into the visitor's chair as if she owned it. More specifically, we need to discuss how much it's going to cost for you to make this situation go away. Maya's arms tightened around her son's automatically, a mother's instinct to protect. Excuse me? Let's not pretend this is complicated. Victoria crossed her legs, her Louboutins clicking together with finality. Marcus went through a rebellious phase. You were part of that phase. But now, there are children involved, and certain realities must be addressed. Certain realities? Maya's voice came out steady despite the roaring in her ears. You mean your grandchildren? I mean 2 babies born to a woman my son married in secret, without family approval, without a prenuptial agreement, and... Victoria's pause was deliberate, weighted with meaning, without any understanding of what she was really getting into. The door opened a 3rd time, and Marcus stumbled in looking like he hadn't slept in days. His black hair stood in wild directions, his usual neat appearance completely destroyed. But it was his face that stopped Maya's breath. The raw panic, the guilt, the desperate plea in his dark eyes that told her everything she'd feared was true. Mom, what are you doing here? His voice cracked. Maya, I can explain it, can you? Victoria stood smoothly, positioning herself between them like a general commanding the field. Can you explain to your wife who you really are? Can you explain why you've been living in a Queens apartment working as an IT consultant when you're actually the heir to Thornton Global Industries? Can you explain why you let her give birth to your children, to your sons, without telling her that your family is worth $15 billion? The number hung in the air like a bomb blast. Maya felt Elijah slip slightly in her grip and adjusted automatically, muscle memory taking over while her mind tried to process what she'd just heard. 15 billion, not million. Billion with a B. Marcus's face drained of color. Maya, please you let me think we were struggling. Maya's voice came out hollow, distant. You let me work night shifts at the clinic while pregnant with twins because we needed the money. You let me apply for Medicaid. You watched me stress about hospital bills and formula costs, and she couldn't finish, couldn't breathe. He also let you think he loved you, Victoria added, her tone almost gentle now, the way a predator might purr before the kill. But love is a luxury, my dear. And in our family, marriages are investments that require proper due diligence. She pulled a folder from her designer bag and set it on Maya's bed. Cream-colored, expensive, filled with documents that Maya's nursing-exhausted brain couldn't quite focus on. That's an annulment agreement. Very generous terms. $5 million to walk away quietly, sign away all parental rights, and forget this unfortunate situation ever happened. Parental rights? Maya's voice climbed an octave, startling both babies into renewed crying. These are my children. These are Thornton heirs, Victoria corrected. Or they will be, once proper paternity is established and custody arrangements are made. My son made a mistake, certainly. But the Thornton family has considerable resources to ensure that mistake doesn't define his future. Or yours. Marcus finally found his voice. Mom, stop. This isn't what we discussed. I told you I'm staying with Maya. I'm staying with my family. You told me you'd had a moment of weakness. Victoria's voice went sharp as glass. You told me this girl seduced you, that you weren't thinking clearly, that you regretted everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya looked at Marcus, searching his face for denial, for outrage, for anything that would contradict his mother's words. What she saw instead was guilt written so clearly it might as well have been tattooed on his forehead. You said that? Maya whispered. You told your mother I seduced you? It was... She twisted my words, Maya. Please, I never meant... Marcus reached for her, but Maya flinched back, clutching the twins closer. Victoria's smile was triumphant. Marcus, darling, why don't you step outside while your wife and I finish discussing business? These negotiations go much more smoothly without emotional complications. She's not negotiating anything. Marcus's voice finally found strength. Mom, get out, now. This is my family and you have no right. I have every right. Victoria's tone could have frozen oceans. I have custody papers being filed as we speak. I have evidence of an unstable home environment. I have witnesses who will testify that this woman trapped my son with a pregnancy, that she's financially dependent, that she's unable to provide proper care for one baby, much less two. She turned back to Maya, and something in her expression made Maya's blood run cold. Not anger or hatred, but simple calculation. The look of someone solving an equation where Maya and her babies were nothing more than variables to be eliminated. Sign the papers. Dear, take the money. Start over somewhere far from here. Somewhere you can make a life that actually suits you. Victoria's voice dropped lower, intimate and poisonous. Or fight us. and watch us systematically destroy everything. We'll take your nursing license. We'll take your apartment. We'll take those babies and raise them the way Thornton children should be raised, without their troubled mother who couldn't handle the pressure. Maya looked down at Elijah and Caleb, both still crying, their tiny faces scrunched with distress they couldn't name. She thought about the life she'd imagined, simple, honest, built on love instead of money. She thought about Marcus's promises, his tender moments, the way he'd held her hand and told her they were going to build something beautiful together. All lies. All of it. "Get out," she said quietly. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "I said get out." Maya stood, ignoring the way her incision pulled and burned, ignoring the way her legs shook. "Both of you, get out of my room." Marcus made a strangled sound. "Maya, please just let me explain." "Explain what? That you're a billionaire who let me think we could barely afford diapers? That you told your mother I trapped you? That you're ashamed of me, of us, of these babies?" Maya's voice cracked but held. "There's nothing to explain, Marcus. You've said everything I need to hear." "This is a mistake," Marcus said desperately. "Please, just give me 5 minutes to—" "Your 5 minutes expired about 15 minutes ago." Patricia appeared in the doorway again, her earlier hostility replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "Mrs. Chen has requested that you leave, both of you. Hospital security is on their way if you need an escort." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You're making a very stupid choice, girl." "Maybe." Maya looked directly at Victoria, at this woman whose money and power had probably steamrolled hundreds of people. "But it's my choice, and these are my sons. Now get out before I start screaming loud enough to bring every nurse on this floor running." After they left, Victoria with icy fury, Marcus with backward glances full of desperation, Maya sank back into her chair and let the reality crash over her. She had 2 weeks until her apartment lease renewal. She had $847 in her checking account. She had 2 newborn sons who needed everything. And she had absolutely no idea what she was going to do. Her phone buzzed again. The detective. "I saw them leaving. Are you okay? There's a coffee shop 2 blocks east. When you're released, meet me there. Trust me, Maya. You need to hear what I know about the Thornton family. And you need to hear it before they come back." Maya looked at her sons, at these tiny humans who were the only real thing in her life right now, and made a decision. She wasn't signing anything. She wasn't giving up. And if Marcus Chen Thornton thought she was just another problem his family's money could solve, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Outside her window, New York City hummed with its usual chaos, sirens and horns, and the crush of 8 million people living their lives. Maya had been swallowed by this city once before, had clawed her way up from nothing to become a nurse, to make something of herself. She'd do it again, for Elijah, for Caleb, for the woman she'd been before Marcus's lies had convinced her she was less than she was. The Thornton family had declared war without knowing who they were fighting. That was going to be their first mistake. The coffee shop detective Sarah Chen had specified was called the Daily Grind, one of those anonymous New York establishments that survived on convenience rather than charm. Maya pushed the double stroller through the door, a cheap model she'd bought secondhand, and immediately felt every eye in the place turned toward her. 2-week-old twins had that effect. Though Maya suspected the stares had more to do with her obvious exhaustion and the way she moved like someone who'd recently been carved open and stitched back together. Detective Chen sat in the back corner, her badge visible on her belt, a laptop open on the table. She was younger than her voice had suggested, maybe late 30s, with short black hair and sharp eyes that tracked Maya's approach with professional assessment. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said, standing to help Maya maneuver the stroller into position. "How are you feeling?" "Like I gave birth 14 days ago and just found out my entire marriage is a lie." Maya sank into the chair, feeling her incision pull. The hospital had given her a 2-week supply of pain medication, but she'd been rationing it, unsure how she'd afford refills. "You said you know something about Marcus's family?" Sarah's expression shifted into something between pity and professional neutrality. "I've been investigating the Thornton family for 6 months as part of a larger investigation into corporate fraud and discrimination. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but I need you to listen all the way through." She turned her laptop around. On the screen was a corporate website for Thornton Global Industries, sleek, modern, featuring images of gleaming office buildings and smiling diverse employees that Maya suspected were stock photos. The leadership page showed 3 faces: Victoria Thornton, CEO; Charles Thornton, CFO; Blair Thornton, Chief Marketing Officer. "That's Marcus's mother," Maya said, pointing at Victoria's professionally shot portrait. "And that's his father." Sarah tapped Charles's image, a silver-haired white man with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Charles Thornton, tech billionaire, real estate mogul, and according to 15 sealed lawsuits, a man with a very specific pattern of discriminatory business practices." Maya's stomach clenched. What kind of discrimination? The kind that ensures Thornton Global's executive suite remains remarkably white, despite their public diversity initiatives. The kind that settles sexual harassment claims for 7 figures and makes them disappear. The kind that... Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Includes a family trust that explicitly disinherits any Thornton heir who marries outside the family's cultural and racial standards." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She looked down at Elijah and Caleb, sleeping peacefully in their stroller, their beautiful brown skin a perfect blend of her and Marcus. "They have a racist trust?" "Had. Past tense. It was quietly dissolved 3 years ago after a leaked copy made the news. But the attitudes that created it..." Sarah's expression was grim. "Those don't disappear with legal paperwork." She pulled up another document, what looked like a private investigator's report. "Maya, Marcus Chen isn't Marcus's real name. Or rather, it's only half his real name. He's Marcus Chen Thornton. His father is Charles Thornton, but his mother, his birth mother, was Lin Chen, a Chinese-American architect who worked for Thornton Global 23 years ago." Maya's mind reeled. "But Victoria... Victoria is Charles's wife, his second wife. She married him when Marcus was 8 years old, and Lin had been removed from the picture." Sarah's tone made it clear removed was a euphemism for something darker. "Lin Chen died in a car accident when Marcus was 10. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses, suspiciously large insurance payout to the Thornton family trust." "You think they killed her?" Maya whispered. "I think Lin Chen was an inconvenient complication to Charles Thornton's marriage to Victoria Whitmore, whose family owns half the commercial real estate in Manhattan. I think Marcus grew up watching his father erase his mother's existence. And I think..." Sarah's voice softened. "He's been running from that ever since." Maya felt tears threaten but pushed them back. Caleb stirred in his stroller, making small sounds that meant he'd be screaming for food in approximately 3 minutes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the Thornton family destroys people, Maya. They destroyed Lin Chen. They've destroyed dozens of employees, business partners, anyone who threatened their carefully curated image. And now you're threatening that image by existing. Sarah leaned forward. Victoria Thornton filed for emergency custody of your sons this morning. The hearing is Monday. She has 5 lawyers and unlimited resources. You have nothing, Maya finished. I have nothing. You have the truth. Sarah pulled out a thick folder. These are sealed court documents I absolutely should not be sharing with you. Discrimination lawsuits, harassment claims, evidence of the Thornton family paying people to disappear. If this ever goes to court, if you need ammunition. Detective Chen. Maya kept her voice steady. Why are you helping me? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against her coffee cup. Because Lin Chen was my cousin. Because I've spent 6 months trying to build a case against the family that killed her and watching them buy their way out of every consequence. Because you and your sons deserve better than to become 3 more people the Thorntons erase. The weight of it settled over Maya like a shroud. She'd married into a family that killed inconvenient women. She'd given birth to children they'd rather pretend didn't exist. And she had 72 hours to figure out how to protect them. What do I do? Maya asked. First, you don't go back to that apartment. Victoria knows where you live. She'll have people watching, documenting everything. What time you wake up, how you care for the babies, who visits. She's building a case that you're an unfit mother. I'm a pediatric nurse. You're a pediatric nurse who's black, poor, and married to a man who lied about his identity. In Victoria Thornton's world, those are 3 strikes. Sarah's bluntness was almost kind in its honesty. There's a women's shelter in Brooklyn, St. Catherine's. They specialize in helping mothers with newborns. I can get you in tonight. A shelter. Maya looked at her sons, at these tiny humans who deserved so much better than this. I'm taking my babies to a homeless shelter. You're taking your babies somewhere safe while you figure out your next move. Sarah handed her a business card. That's my personal cell. You call me if anything happens. If Marcus shows up, if Victoria contacts you, if anyone from Thornton Global tries to intimidate you, anything. Maya pocketed the card and stood carefully, every movement sending jolts of pain through her incision. Detective Chen. Sarah. Why did Marcus marry me? If his family is this racist, this controlling, why would he even... Sarah's expression was complicated, a mix of sadness and understanding. I think Marcus was trying to be different from his father. I think he wanted to believe he could have something real, something his family's money couldn't touch. But wanting to be different and actually having the courage to fight for it? She shook her head. Those are 2 very different things. The apartment in Queens looked exactly as Maya had left it 2 weeks ago when her water had broken early. Dishes in the sink, half-packed hospital bag on the bed. The nursery with its second-hand cribs and carefully washed onesies that Marcus had insisted they buy despite his supposed tight budget. All lies. Every moment of their life together had been a performance. Maya stood in the doorway with the twins, keys in her shaking hand, and knew immediately that something was wrong. The door was unlocked. She'd triple-checked it the morning she went into labor, paranoid about break-ins in their not-great neighborhood. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing in the small space. The answer came from her bedroom. Finally. I was beginning to think you'd actually taken that detective's advice and run. Marcus sat on their bed. Her bed, she corrected mentally, looking like he hadn't slept since the hospital. He'd changed clothes at least, now wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of the expensive casual wear he'd shown up in earlier. But his eyes were red-rimmed, and his hands shook slightly as he stood. "How did you get in?" Maya demanded. "It's my apartment, Maya. I'm on the lease." "It's the apartment you lied about being able to afford. The apartment you pretended we were barely scraping by to pay for while you're worth—" She couldn't even say the number. It felt obscene. "Get out." "I'm not leaving. Not until you listen to me." Marcus took a step forward, and Maya instinctively stepped back, positioning the stroller between them. Something flickered across his face. Hurt. Maybe recognition of what he'd destroyed. "I know I lied. I know I should have told you the truth from the beginning. But Maya, please, you have to understand why I couldn't." "I don't have to understand anything." Maya's voice was ice. "You let me work night shifts while pregnant. You let me stress about money. You let me give birth alone because you were handling a family emergency that was probably your mother having a meltdown about your secret poor wife. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Marcus? Explain it to me. Explain how the man who held my hand and promised me forever is actually a billionaire who told his mother I trapped him with a pregnancy." Marcus's face crumpled. "I never said that. Mom twisted everything. She's been trying to destroy us since she found out we got married. She hired private investigators. She threatened to cut me off completely." "And you let her?" Maya's voice rose, startling both babies into crying. She started to bend to comfort them, gasped as pain shot through her incision, and had to grab the wall for support. Marcus was there instantly, his hands on her arms, steadying her. "You shouldn't be up this much. The doctor said 6 weeks before—" "Don't touch me." Maya shook him off, breathing through the pain. "Don't you dare touch me and pretend you care." "I do care. Maya, I love you. I love our sons." The apartment door opened again, and this time Victoria swept in like a conquering general, flanked by 2 people Maya didn't recognize. A woman in her late 20s with Victoria's blonde hair and the kind of artificial beauty that came from expensive procedures. And another woman, this one closer to Marcus's age, with dark hair and a face that might have been pretty if not for the expression of smug satisfaction she wore like perfume. "Marcus, darling, we've discussed this." Victoria's tone was the patient condescension of someone addressing a slow child. "You can't keep running to this girl every time your emotions override your common sense." The blonde woman, Blair, Maya realized with a jolt, Marcus's sister from the website photos, immediately pulled out her phone and started recording. "Oh my God. This is the apartment? Marcus, you've been living in literal poverty to prove some kind of point." "Blair, put the phone away," Marcus said tiredly. "Are you kidding? This is gold content. Billionaire heir slums it with gold digger. My followers are going to eat this up." Blair circled the small living room, filming every detail. The peeling paint, the secondhand furniture, the tiny kitchen where Maya had learned to cook on a hot plate because the stove was unreliable. The dark-haired woman stepped forward, her hand extended toward Maya with practiced grace. "Sloane Prescott, I'm an old friend of Marcus's. I'm so sorry you're going through this difficult situation." Maya didn't take the offered hand. Something about Sloane's tone, the way she said "difficult situation," like Maya was a problem to be solved rather than a person, made her skin crawl. "Sloane is here to provide support during this transition," Victoria said smoothly. "She's been kind enough to offer her expertise in family counseling. She's the woman you wanted Marcus to marry." Maya interrupted, the pieces clicking together. "The appropriate choice?" Sloane's smile didn't waver. "I prefer to think of myself as someone who understands the complexities of life in families like the Thorntons. Families with certain expectations." Racial expectations, you mean? Maya looked directly at Victoria. That's what this is really about, isn't it? It's not that I'm poor or uneducated. It's that I'm black. And you can't stand the idea of your precious heir having black children. The silence that followed was deafening. Blair's phone was still recording, capturing every moment. Marcus looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Sloane's expression flickered, there and gone, revealing something cold beneath the practiced sympathy. But Victoria? Victoria's mask slipped entirely, revealing the truth underneath. Those babies, she said quietly, gesturing toward the stroller where Elijah and Caleb were crying, are Thornton heirs. They will be raised with proper values, proper education, proper understanding of their place in society. What they will not be raised as is some diversity project to assuage your guilt about being exactly what you are. Mom. Marcus's voice finally found strength. That's enough. Maya, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Maya felt something break inside her chest, the last fragile hope that somehow this could be resolved. All of you need to leave. Now. Actually, Victoria said, pulling documents from her designer bag, this apartment's lease expired yesterday. I had my lawyers check. You've been living here month to month for the past 6 weeks. And as of this morning, the building's new owner, who happens to be a Thornton Global subsidiary, has declined to renew your tenancy. Maya stared at the eviction notice Victoria held out like a weapon. You bought my building? I bought the building this morning, dear. Just in time to ensure you don't have anywhere to run with my grandchildren. Victoria's smile was pure triumph. You have until 6 p.m. to remove your belongings. After that, anything left will be disposed of. That's illegal. Maya grabbed for her phone. You can't just... I can, and I did. Check with any lawyer you like. You'll find everything is perfectly legal. Victoria turned to Marcus. Now, darling, you have a choice to make. Come home with your family, where you belong. Or stay here with this girl and watch us systematically dismantle every aspect of her life until she has nothing left but the choice to walk away. Marcus looked between them. His mother, cold and powerful and absolutely certain of her victory, and Maya, exhausted and scared and holding their sons. Maya watched his face, watched the war playing out behind his eyes, and knew with sickening certainty what he was going to choose. Mom, please, he said weakly. There has to be another way. There is another way. Sign the annulment papers. Let us provide proper care for the children. Make the right choice for once in your privileged life. Marcus? Maya's voice cut through the room. Look at me. Look at your sons. He did finally, and what Maya saw in his face broke something fundamental inside her. He loved them, she could see that, but he loved his comfort more. He loved his money more. He loved avoiding conflict with his family more than he loved being a man worthy of being called a father. I need time, Marcus said. And those 3 words were a confession and a betrayal all at once. No, Maya said quietly. What you need is a spine. But you're not going to find one, are you? You're going to go home with Mommy and let her fix everything while I figure out how to take care of our children by myself. She grabbed the duffel bag she'd brought from the hospital and started throwing clothes into it. Her clothes, baby supplies, anything essential. Her hands shook, making everything take twice as long. But she refused to break down. Not here. Not in front of these people who were watching her destruction like it was entertainment. Blair was still filming, her expression delighted. This is incredible. The drama, the raw emotion. Maya, if you want to tell your side of the story, I have 3 million Instagram followers who'd love to hear it. Blair, stop, Marcus said, but there was no force behind it. Why? She's about to be famous anyway. Gold Digger Gets Reality Check is basically writing itself. Although, Blair zoomed in on the twins, the babies are actually pretty cute. Mixed kids photograph really well. Very trendy right now. Maya felt something snap. She turned to Blair, this woman who treated human lives like content for her feed, and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just run out of things to lose. Film this, Maya said clearly. Film the moment I tell Marcus Chen Thornton that he's a coward who chose his family's racist money over his own children. Film the moment I tell Victoria Thornton that those babies she wants to take from me, they're going to grow up knowing exactly who tried to erase them and why. Film the moment you all realize that I'm not disappearing quietly. She hoisted the duffel bag onto her shoulder, feeling her incision scream in protest, and pushed the stroller toward the door. You want a war? You've got one. But don't think for a second that money protects you from the truth. The truth? Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Dear girl, we are the truth. We decide what people believe. We control the narrative. By Monday morning, you'll be the unstable woman who tried to trap a billionaire with a pregnancy. Your nursing license will be under investigation. Your name will be synonymous with Gold Digger. Maya paused in the doorway. Maybe. But those babies will still be yours grandsons. And eventually, they'll be old enough to ask questions about why their grandmother tried to destroy their mother. I wonder what your precious narrative will say then. She left before anyone could respond, pushing the stroller down 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. Had been broken for months. Another thing Marcus had pretended to be helpless to fix. Every step sent pain shooting through her body. But she kept moving, kept breathing, kept the tears locked behind her teeth until she was outside in the October evening air. St. Catherine's Women's Shelter was in Brooklyn, Detective Chen had said. Maya pulled out her phone, hands shaking too hard to dial at first, and called the number Sarah had given her. It's Maya, she said when Sarah answered. I need that shelter. Tonight. Right now. I'll meet you there in 30 minutes, Sarah replied immediately. Maya, did something happen? Everything happened. Maya looked back at the building she'd called home, at the windows of the apartment where Marcus and his family were probably already celebrating their victory. And Detective Chen, I'm ready to hear everything you know about destroying the Thornton family. All of it. Because Victoria Thornton had made one critical mistake. She'd assumed Maya would break, would run, would disappear like Lynn Chen and all the other women the family had erased. But Maya wasn't running. She was regrouping. And she was going to make sure that when the Thorntons finally understood what they'd started, it would be far too late to stop what was coming. St. Catherine's Women's Shelter occupied a converted brownstone in Crown Heights, its brick facade weathered but sturdy, like the women it housed. Maya pushed the stroller up the accessibility ramp, a recent addition, judging by the new concrete. While Detective Sarah Chen held the door open with one hand and carried Maya's pathetic duffel bag with the other. Inside smelled like industrial cleaner, baby formula, and something Maya recognized from her years as a nurse. The particular scent of women, holding themselves together by sheer force of will. A dozen faces looked up from the common room, some curious, some wary, all marked by the kind of exhaustion that came from rebuilding your life from the ground up. Maya Johnson? A woman in her 60s approached, her gray locks pulled back in a colorful wrap, her eyes kind but assessing. I'm Sister Margaret, Sarah called ahead. "Come on, let's get you and those babies settled before they wake up and decide to let everyone know they're hungry." The room Sister Margaret led them to was small but clean. 2 twin beds, a dresser, a rocking chair by the window, and a changing table that had seen better days but was spotlessly maintained. Not home, but safe, which was more than Maya had felt since Victoria Thornton had walked into her hospital room. "Bathrooms shared, down the hall," Sister Margaret explained, her voice low to avoid waking the twins. "There's a kitchen on the first floor. Communal cooking, but we've got formula and diapers donated by the Presbyterian Church. You'll need to sign in and out, curfews at 10 p.m., and we have house meetings every Sunday to discuss chores and rules." "How long can I stay?" Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. Sister Margaret's expression softened. "As long as you need, honey. As long as you're working toward getting back on your feet." She glanced at Sarah. "Detective Chen vouched for you, and that means something around here. She's helped a lot of women escape bad situations." After Sister Margaret left, Sarah helped Maya carefully transfer the sleeping twins from the stroller to one of the beds, building a protective barrier with pillows. Maya's incision was screaming now, the pain medication long worn off. But she'd left her prescription at the apartment in her rush to leave. "There's a clinic 2 blocks over," Sarah said, reading her mind. "They take walk-ins, and they're used to working with the shelter. I can take you tomorrow morning." Maya sank into the rocking chair, every muscle in her body trembling with exhaustion and shock. "This morning I woke up thinking my biggest problem was convincing my husband to help with night feedings. Now I'm in a homeless shelter planning to go to war with billionaires." Sarah pulled the other chair closer and sat down with the weariness of someone who'd had this conversation too many times. "Maya, there's something else you need to know. Something about Marcus that explains, not excuses, but explains why he is the way he is." "I don't want to hear excuses. It's not an excuse. It's the truth. And if you're going to fight the Thorntons, you need to understand what you're really fighting." Sarah pulled out her phone and opened a photo. Old, grainy, clearly from a newspaper archive. "This is Chen, Marcus's birth mother." The woman in the photo was beautiful. Elegant features, straight black hair, wearing architect's drafting clothes, and smiling at the camera with shy pride. The caption read, "Local architect Chen wins design award for innovative sustainable housing project." "She looks happy," Maya said softly. She was. Until she got involved with Charles Thornton. Sarah swiped to another photo. This one a society page shot from 23 years ago. Charles Thornton stood next to Chen at some gala, his hand possessively on her waist, his smile proprietary. Charles was married to his first wife when he started his affair with Lynn. When she got pregnant, he divorced wife number 1 and married Lynn. So Victoria's the stepmother. Yes, but there's more. Sarah swiped again, this time to a photo that made Maya's breath catch. It showed a young Marcus, maybe 5 years old, standing between Lynn and an older black man with kind eyes and Lynn's same smile. "This is Marcus's maternal grandfather, Raymond Chen, and this is where it gets complicated." Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping even lower. "Raymond Chen wasn't Chinese, Maya. His birth name was Raymond Charleston. He was a black man from South Carolina who moved to San Francisco in the 1960s, married a Chinese woman named Mei Ling, and took her surname when they opened a restaurant together. It was easier that way. Better for business. Fewer hassles with housing discrimination." Maya's mind reeled. Marcus's grandfather was black? Which makes Marcus's mother half-black. Which makes Marcus... Sarah let the implication hang in the air. 1/4 black. Maya looked at the sleeping twins, at their beautiful brown skin, and felt something shift in her understanding. He's been passing. Not intentionally, maybe. But yes. The Thornton family buried Lynn's black heritage when she married Charles. They paid Raymond to stay away from Marcus after Lynn died. They erased every trace of that side of his family tree. Sarah's voice was tight with old anger. My cousin Lynn grew up knowing her black father, but watching her mother's family pretend he didn't exist. When she married Charles, she tried to honor both sides of her heritage, and the Thorntons destroyed her for it. Does Marcus know? Maya whispered. Does he know his grandfather was black? I don't know. Raymond died 10 years ago, right after Lynn. 2 accidents 6 months apart. Marcus was 10 years old, and Victoria had just become his legal guardian. Sarah showed another photo. Marcus at maybe 12, standing stiff and uncomfortable next to Victoria and Charles at some charity event. His expression already learning to hide whatever he really felt. If he knows, he's been hiding it for 20 years. If he doesn't, then the Thorntons have successfully erased that part of him. Maya felt tears finally break through, hot and angry, and grieving for a man she'd thought she knew. He let his mother threaten to take our black children, his children who have more right to the Thornton name than he does. I don't think Marcus sees it that way. I think Marcus sees himself as white because that's what the Thorntons taught him to see. That's what kept him safe in that family. Sarah stood and moved to the window, looking out at the Brooklyn street below. But Maya, this is the leverage you need if the truth about Marcus's racial heritage came out. If the world knew that the Thornton heir has been passing, that his children are actually continuing his mother's black lineage, it would destroy Victoria's carefully constructed narrative. It would also destroy Marcus, Maya said quietly. Would that be so terrible? After what he's done to you? Maya thought about the man who'd held her during thunderstorms, who'd memorized her coffee order, who'd cried the first time he felt the twins kick. That man had been real, she was certain. But so was the coward who'd stood in their apartment and chosen his mother's approval over his family. I don't know what I want yet, she admitted, except to make sure my sons are safe and that Victoria Thornton never gets her hands on them. A soft knock interrupted them. Sister Margaret's voice came through the door. Maya? You have a visitor? Young woman, blonde, says she's Blair Thornton? Sarah and Maya exchanged sharp glances. Do not let her in, Sarah said immediately. Already told her no, Sister Margaret replied. But she's out front with a camera crew. Says she wants to film a segment about the other side of the story. I can call the police if you want. Maya stood carefully, wincing at the pull of her incision. No. I'll talk to her. Maya, that's exactly what she wants. I know what she wants. Maya moved to the mirror above the dresser, taking in her appearance. The hospital bracelet still on her wrist, the exhaustion carved into her face, the milk stains on her shirt from 2-week-old twins who needed her. She wants footage of me looking desperate and defeated. She wants to film me in a homeless shelter with my babies and frame it as the gold digger getting what she deserves. Then why give her what she wants? Maya met Sarah's eyes in the mirror. Because sometimes the truth is more powerful than the narrative. And right now, I look like exactly what I am. A woman who just gave birth, who's been thrown out of her home, who's fighting to protect her children from people with unlimited resources. She turned around. That's not a bad look, detective. That's a sympathetic look. Sarah's expression shifted from concern to something like respect. You're going to play this smart. I'm going to play this honest. There's a difference. Maya straightened her shoulders despite the pain. Sister Margaret, can you tell Blair I'll give her 5 minutes? But only if she agrees to film unedited and post the full conversation. You sure about this, honey? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Blair Thornton stood on the shelter's front steps like a fashion magazine had vomited designer labels onto a person. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the October wind. Her makeup Instagram ready, her outfit carefully curated to look expensive but approachable. Behind her, a young man with a professional camera waited, and Blair's phone was already recording. Maya? Blair's voice was bright, performative. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk. My followers have been asking about you non-stop since I posted about meeting you earlier. What did you post? Maya kept her voice level, her hands clasped in front of her to hide their shaking. Blair's smile flickered. Just, the situation. How Marcus has been living in that apartment. How you have these babies, the complexity of it all. She gestured to the shelter behind Maya. And now you're here, which I think really illustrates the difficult position everyone's in. Difficult position, Maya repeated slowly. Is that what you call it when your mother-in-law buys your building and evicts you 6 hours after you're released from the hospital? The camera swung to capture Maya's face, and she let it. Let them see the exhaustion, the pain, the barely contained fury of a woman pushed past her breaking point. Blair's practiced sympathy was already cracking. Well, the lease was expired. The lease that your mother manipulated to expire while I was in the hospital giving birth to her grandchildren. Maya took a step forward, ignoring the way her body screamed in protest. Your brother's children, Blair. Your nephews. 2-week-old babies who are currently sleeping in a homeless shelter because your family decided they'd rather destroy me than accept that Marcus married a black woman. This isn't about race, Blair stammered, her camera work getting shaky. Then what's it about? Money? Because I didn't know Marcus had any. Identity? Because I didn't know he'd lied about who he was. Love? Because I genuinely loved your brother and thought he loved me enough to stand up to people like you. Maya could feel anger replacing fear, adrenaline overriding pain. Behind Blair, she noticed a small crowd gathering. Other shelter residents, passers-by drawn by the camera, people with their own phones out now, recording this confrontation from multiple angles. Look, I'm trying to be fair here, Blair said defensively. I'm giving you a chance to tell your side. No, you're not. You're trying to get footage of me looking desperate so you can frame this as some cautionary tale about women who trap rich men. Maya's voice rose, carrying to the growing crowd. But here's what your 3 million followers need to know, Blair. Your brother pursued me. He lied to me about his identity for 18 months. He let me work night shifts while pregnant with twins because we supposedly needed the money. And when his family found out about us, instead of standing up for his wife and children, he let your mother threaten to take my babies away. Marcus loves you. Marcus loves his comfort more. Maya felt tears threaten, but pushed them back. And you know what the saddest part is? I would have loved him anyway. If he'd told me the truth from the beginning. If he'd said, my family is racist, and they'll make our lives hell. But I choose you. I would have signed up for that fight. But he didn't give me that choice. He made me the villain in a story where the only thing I did wrong was believe him when he said, forever. Blair's phone was still recording, but her expression had shifted from performative sympathy to something harder to read. So what are you going to do? Sue us? Take Marcus to court? I'm going to protect my children. Maya's voice dropped, deadly quiet. That's all I care about right now. Elijah and Caleb are going to grow up knowing they're loved, they're wanted, and their mother fought like hell to keep them safe from people who wanted to erase them. Nobody wants to erase them. Your mother offered me $5 million to sign away my parental rights and walk away. This morning, in my hospital room, while I was still bleeding from a C-section. Maya let that sink in for the cameras, for the crowd, for the social media audience that would inevitably see this. So yes, Blair, your family wants to erase us, but we're not going anywhere. She turned to walk back inside, then paused. Oh, and Blair, you might want to check what's trending on Twitter right now. I think you'll find the narrative isn't going the way your mother planned. Inside, Sarah was already at her laptop, and the smile on her face was pure vindication. Maya, come look at this. The screen showed Twitter's trending topics, and there, at number 3, was #Justice for Maya. Sarah scrolled through the flood of posts. People who'd been filming Blair's Instagram story, who'd recorded the confrontation from different angles, who were now sharing their own stories of discrimination and family betrayal. One post had gone particularly viral, a side-by-side comparison of Blair's Instagram story from the apartment. Can you believe this poverty cosplay? And footage someone had captured of Maya being confronted on the shelter steps. The caption read, "Rich girl mocks new mother's home. Same new mother defending her babies at a shelter hours later." This is what systemic inequality looks like. Justice for Maya, #Thornton family racist. It's everywhere, Sarah said, scrolling through news alerts. BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, even CNN is picking it up. Tech billionaire family accused of racist harassment of son's wife. Victoria Thornton's office has been flooded with calls. Thornton Global's stock dropped 2 points in the last hour. Maya sank into a chair, the adrenaline finally crashing. I didn't think. I just wanted her to see me, to see what they'd done. Sometimes that's all it takes. The truth, at the right moment, to the right audience. Sarah's phone rang and she glanced at the screen. It's my captain. The investigation into the Thornton family just got fast-tracked based on public pressure. She answered the call, stepping into the hallway. Maya sat alone in the shelter's common room, listening to the sounds of other women's lives, babies crying, conversations in 3 languages, the TV playing a cooking show nobody was watching. This was her reality now. Not the fairy tale she'd imagined, not the modest but happy life she'd been building, but this. A shelter, a viral hashtag, and 2 sleeping babies who deserved so much better than the war their birth had started. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. But the message made her breath catch. Maya, it's Marcus. Please, I know I don't deserve it, but we need to talk. There are things you don't know, things about my family, about me, things that might change how you see all of this. I'm outside. Will you give me 5 minutes? Maya looked toward the window, where she could see a figure standing alone in the growing darkness. Not Marcus in his expensive casual clothes, but Marcus in ratty jeans and a jacket she recognized from their early dates, before she knew he was rich. When he'd been playing at poverty, but somehow had gotten some things right. She thought about Detective Chen's revelation, about Raymond Charleston, who became Raymond Chen, about Lynn, who tried to honor both sides of her heritage and died for it. She thought about Marcus at 10 years old, watching his mother disappear and learning that the only way to survive was to hide who you really were. and she thought about Elijah and Caleb, sleeping upstairs, who would grow up with questions about their father and would deserve answers that were more complex than, "He was a coward who chose money over us." Maya stood carefully, feeling every one of her 14 postpartum days, and walked to the door. Sometimes the truth required face-to-face conversation. Sometimes you had to look someone in the eye to see if there was anything left worth saving. And sometimes, Maya thought as she opened the door to face her husband, the only way forward was through the hardest conversation of your life. Marcus looked up as she stepped outside, and the expression on his face wasn't the guilt she'd expected or the desperation she'd feared. It was recognition. Like he was seeing her clearly for the first time and understanding, finally, exactly who he'd underestimated. 5 minutes, Maya said. That's all you get. Marcus looked smaller somehow, standing in the streetlight outside St. Catherine's. Not physically. He still had the same lean frame, the same height that had made Maya feel protected when they'd first dated. But something essential had diminished, like watching a building after the foundation cracks. You can see it's still standing, but you know it won't survive the next strong wind. "Thank you," he said quietly as Maya stepped fully outside, letting the shelter door close behind her. "I wasn't sure you'd come down." "I wasn't sure I would either." Maya crossed her arms, as much for warmth as defensiveness. The October evening had turned cold, and she'd left the apartment, their former apartment, without her jacket. "You have 5 minutes, Marcus. Use them wisely." He flinched at the formality in her voice, at the way she said his full name instead of the dozen pet names she'd used during their marriage. "I need to tell you what really happened. Why I didn't tell you about my family, about the money, about—" He stopped, his jaw working like he was physically chewing on words too difficult to swallow. "About the fact that you're a quarter black?" Maya watched his face drain of color. "Yeah. Detective Chen told me about Lynn, about your grandfather Raymond Charleston, about how your family erased that entire side of your heritage." Marcus staggered back a step, grabbing the wrought iron fence for support. "You know about Raymond?" "I know your grandfather was a black man from South Carolina who took his Chinese wife's surname to avoid discrimination. I know your mother was half black. I know you've been passing, intentionally or not, for your entire adult life." Maya's voice was steady despite the emotion roiling in her chest. "What I don't know is whether you knew. Did you know, Marcus? When you watched your mother threaten to take our black children, did you know you were betraying your own heritage?" The silence stretched so long Maya thought he might not answer. A car passed on the street, its headlights briefly illuminating Marcus's face, and Maya saw tears tracking down his cheeks. "I knew," he whispered. "I've always known." The admission hit Maya like a physical blow. "You knew. You knew, and you still—" "Let me explain. Please." Marcus's voice cracked. "When my mother died, I was 10 years old. Raymond, my grandfather, he tried to stay in my life. He'd come to the house, bring me books about black history, tell me stories about his childhood in the South. But Victoria—" He stopped, breathing hard. "Victoria told him he wasn't welcome. She said he was confusing me, filling my head with ideas that didn't match who I was supposed to be." "Who you were supposed to be," Maya repeated flatly. "You mean white?" "I mean a Thornton, and Thorntons are—" Marcus made a helpless gesture. "My father married Victoria 6 months after my mother died. Suddenly, I had this new family, this new life, and everyone acted like Lynn had never existed. They took down her photos. They stopped talking about her. And Raymond, his voice broke completely. Victoria got a restraining order. Said he was harassing me, confusing my identity during a vulnerable time. I was 10, Maya. I didn't understand what was happening until it was already done. Maya felt something crack in her resolve. Not forgiveness, but understanding. The image of 10-year-old Marcus, grieving his mother and losing his grandfather too, tried to soften her fury. She pushed it back. So you spent the next 20 years pretending to be white to keep your family happy? I spent the next 20 years surviving. Marcus's voice rose, then dropped, again when he remembered where they were. You don't understand what it's like in that family. Every choice, every relationship, every moment of your life is scrutinized and controlled. My father measures worth by stock portfolios and social connections. Victoria measures it by bloodlines and legacy. I learned early that the easiest way to survive was to be exactly what they wanted me to be. Until you met me, Maya's voice was bitter. Let me guess. I was your rebellion. Your way of proving you weren't like them. You were my hope. Marcus took a step closer, and Maya noticed he was shaking. Maya, when I met you at that hospital fundraiser, you were the first person in years who looked at me like I was just a person. Not a Thornton, not an heir, not someone to cultivate or use. Just Marcus. And I wanted, God, I wanted so badly to be just Marcus. To have something real in my life that they couldn't touch or control or ruin. So you lied to me for 18 months. I omitted the truth, which I know isn't better. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Maya's chest ache. I told myself I was protecting you from them, protecting what we had from their influence. But the truth is, I was a coward. I was terrified that if you knew who I really was, you'd either want me for the money or run from the complications. Either way, I'd lose you. And now? Now, I've lost you anyway. Marcus's laugh was hollow. And I deserve it. I know I deserve it, Maya. But our sons don't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. They don't deserve to have Victoria weaponize the courts against you, or to grow up never knowing their father because I was too weak to fight for them. Maya studied his face, searching for manipulation or performance. But all she saw was exhausted honesty. Then fight, Marcus. Stand up to your mother. Tell the court the truth about your heritage, about why Victoria's really trying to take the twins. I can't. The words came out broken. If I do that, if I go public with Raymond's story, it doesn't just affect me. It affects my father's company, shareholders, business partners who've invested billions based on the Thornton name meaning something specific. He looked at her desperately. 30,000 people work for Thornton Global. If the stock crashes, if investors pull out, those people lose their jobs, their pensions, their futures. So 30,000 strangers are more important than your own children. No, but I can't just... Maya, it's not that simple. It is that simple. Maya felt her voice go cold, clinical, the tone she used in the hospital when delivering bad news to families. You have a choice, Marcus. You can be the man your family wants you to be, rich, comfortable, free of complications. Or you can be the man your children need you to be, brave enough to tell the truth even when it's hard. But you don't get to be both. Marcus was crying openly now, and part of Maya, the part that had loved him, that had built dreams around him, wanted to comfort him. But the larger part? The part that had given birth to his sons alone and been thrown out of her home 6 hours after leaving the hospital, stayed still. "There's something else you need to know," Marcus said after a long moment. "About the custody hearing Monday. My mother isn't just trying to take the twins for family pride or racial reasons. There's something bigger happening." "What do you mean?" "My father is dying." Marcus's voice dropped to barely audible. "Pancreatic cancer. He has maybe 6 months. And when he dies, control of Thornton Global goes to me, unless I'm deemed unfit to maintain family standards. That's the language in his will." Maya felt the pieces clicking together. "Victoria's trying to prove you're unfit by pointing to your marriage to me. If she can show I made reckless decisions, marrying someone without proper vetting, having children out of wedlock technically since we eloped without family knowledge, living in poverty by choice, she can argue that I'm not mentally stable enough to run a $15 billion company. The board would vote to install her as permanent CEO instead of transitional. So this isn't about the twins at all. It's about power. The twins are leverage. If she gets custody, she controls my children and therefore controls me. If she can prove you're an unfit mother, poor, living in a shelter, no family support, she gets what she wants, and I'm trapped." Marcus grabbed Maya's hand suddenly, desperately. "That's why I need you to take this seriously. Victoria isn't just playing hardball. She's playing for everything." Maya pulled her hand back. "And what are you playing for, Marcus?" "What do you mean? Are you here to warn me because you care about your sons? Or because you need me to survive this fight so you have leverage against your mother?" She watched his face carefully. "Because right now, I can't tell the difference." Marcus looked stricken. "Both. Is that horrible? I love our boys, Maya. I swear I do. But I also need—" He stopped, seeming to hear how it sounded. "I'm a terrible person." "No, you're an honest one. Finally." Maya took a breath, feeling the November air burn her lungs. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to your family and play whatever role you need to play to survive. I'm not asking you to be brave anymore, Marcus. I'm releasing you from that expectation." "Maya, but—" Her voice hardened. "You're going to help me. Quietly, secretly, in ways your mother won't notice. You're going to get me information, court documents, financial records, anything I can use to fight back. You're going to be my inside source on what Victoria's planning." "Why would you trust me to do that?" "Because you're selfish enough to want to protect your inheritance and just guilty enough to want to protect your sons. Those two motivations should keep you honest." Maya pulled her phone from her pocket. "Detective Chen gave me a secure messaging app. Download it. We communicate only through there, and you tell no one. Not your mother, not your father, not Blair." Marcus pulled out his own phone with shaking hands. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to survive Monday's custody hearing. After that—" Maya smiled, and it wasn't warm. "After that, I'm planning to make sure your mother understands exactly who she underestimated. Again. Maya, if you go to war with her, I'm already at war with her, Marcus. She started it the moment she walked into my hospital room and offered me money to abandon my children." Maya moved toward the shelter door. "The question is whether you're going to help me win or just stay out of my way." "I want to help, I do. But if she finds out, then you'll finally have to choose, won't you?" Maya paused with her hand on the door. "Your minutes are up. Go home, Marcus. Play the dutiful son. And when I message you for information, you decide what kind of father you want to be." She went inside without looking back. but she could feel his presence on the street for several minutes after. Could sense his indecision like a physical weight. Finally, she heard footsteps walking away, and only then did she let herself breathe. Sarah was waiting in the common room, her laptop still open to the flood of social media posts about the Thornton family. How did it go? He told me about Charles dying, about Victoria trying to prove Marcus is unfit so she can keep control of the company. Maya sank into a chair. The twins aren't the point. They're just weapons in a bigger war. Jesus. Sarah typed something rapidly. That changes the entire strategy. If we can prove Victoria's custody suit is motivated by corporate greed rather than concern for the children, we destroy her case. Maya felt something click into place in her mind. Sarah, how hard would it be to get access to Charles Thornton's medical records? Very hard. HIPAA violations, illegal seizure. What if someone gave them to you voluntarily? Say, a family member who had legal access? Sarah's eyes sharpened. Marcus? He's motivated by self-interest right now, which makes him predictable. Maya pulled up the encrypted messaging app on her phone. And predictable people make useful allies, even if they don't make good partners. She typed a message. I need proof of your father's diagnosis. Medical records, prognosis, will documents if you can get them. This isn't about hurting him. It's about proving your mother's real motivation. The response came 3 minutes later. I'll get them. Give me 24 hours. Maya, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know. Maya stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Sorry isn't what our sons need. Information is. Get me the records. She closed the app and looked at Sarah. How fast can you analyze medical records and will documents? For something this important? I'll work all night if I have to. Sarah's smile was predatory. Maya, if we can prove Victoria's trying to weaponize those babies for corporate control, we don't just win the custody case. We bury her. Good. Maya stood carefully, feeling her incision pull. Because I'm done being the victim in this story. Victoria Thornton wants a war. She's about to get one. Upstairs, both twins started crying simultaneously. That particular pitch that meant they were hungry, tired, and done with patience. Maya headed for the stairs, each step sending pain through her body, but also clarity through her mind. She'd spent 18 months being the woman Marcus wanted, accommodating, understanding, willing to make herself smaller to fit into his manufactured life. She'd spent 14 days being the mother her sons needed, fierce, protective, willing to endure anything. Now it was time to be the woman Victoria Thornton had created. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Behind her, Sarah made a phone call, her voice professional and clipped. Captain, it's Chen. I need to fast-track that Thornton investigation. We're looking at potential corporate fraud, custody manipulation, and... Yes, sir. I understand the political implications. But I've got evidence and I've got a witness. We move now, or we lose the opportunity. Maya reached the top of the stairs and pushed open the door to her temporary room. Her sons were both screaming now, their tiny fists waving with outrage at the injustice of being 2 weeks old in an unfair world. I know, babies, she whispered, scooping Elijah up first while Caleb's wails intensified. I know it's hard, but Mommy's here, and Mommy's going to make sure nobody ever takes you away from her. She settled into the rocking chair, positioning Elijah to nurse while Caleb shrieked his impatience. Outside the window, Brooklyn stretched into the darkness, millions of people living their lives, most of them oblivious to the small war being waged in a converted brownstone shelter. But some of them weren't oblivious. Maya's phone buzzed with notifications, messages from strangers offering support, donations to a GoFundMe someone had set up without her knowledge, legal aid organizations offering pro bono representation. The hashtag #HadJusticeForMaya had reached #1 trending worldwide. Victoria Thornton had spent decades carefully controlling the family's public image, using money and influence to bury scandals and manipulate narratives. But she'd made one critical error. She'd underestimated the power of a mother fighting for her children in the age of social media. And she'd underestimated Maya Johnson, pediatric nurse, shelter resident, and the woman who was about to teach the Thornton family that some people couldn't be bought, threatened, or erased. Monday's custody hearing was in 48 hours. Maya had 48 hours to become the woman who could win. She'd been through harder transformations. She had survived nursing school while working 3 jobs. She'd survived a marriage built on lies. She'd survived an emergency C-section and given birth to twins alone. 48 hours to save her children? That was just another shift to get through. And Maya had always been very, very good at surviving her shifts.